Hi, Grandma Abuela here. This is part 2 of my videos of how to talk to your children about sex. I realized that in my first video, I really wasn't very specific. I didn't use a lot of specifics in that video. And I feel like that's really what people are looking for. They are looking for specifics. They want to know how to talk to their children about sex. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think people are looking for. So I decided that I needed to be a little bit more specific. So in this video, I'm going to do that. First of all, don't wait to talk to your kids until they're teenagers. If you wait until they're teenagers, then you've missed some of the greatest teaching moments and teaching years that there are to talk to your kids. I got to thinking, why is it that we're so uncomfortable talking to our children about sex? And I realized it's because we're embarrassed. We're embarrassed about the topic. We're embarrassed about the words that we have to use. And I thought about that a little bit more, and I realized that young children are not embarrassed. They have no filters. They have no embarrassment. You know that when you go to the grocery store and they'll say stuff like, "Mommy, why is that lady so stinky?" or whatever, they say things that really, really embarrass us because they have no filter. They're not embarrassed. So we need to not be embarrassed. This subject shouldn't be something that's embarrassing. It should just be another one of those subjects that we talk about. I believe that you need to start talking to your children at a very young age. And whatever it is that you want to call the body parts in your home when you're talking about different things, like if you want to call it your rump or your bottom or your bum, if you want to call it your pee-pee place or your private place, whatever it is you want to call these things in your home when you're just having general conversation, that's fine. But when you have this conversation about sex, I think it's important that you use real medical terms. So refer to it as a penis, refer to it as a vagina. I'm sure that there's people watching this and there's a little bit of like, ah, and a little snickering, hee 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 hee, because that's what happens when we say those words. But the children need to know the actual medical words of what they are. And when you're talking about sex, use those words. I think that, again, it's important that we don't tell kids more than they're ready to hear, and you're going to have to be that judge. But I also think that by the time kids are, getting ready to start school, they should have at least a rudimentary idea of what sex is and what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. I want to illustrate that with a little story. A mother came to me and she was a little bit horrified about what she should tell her son, because her son, who was only 4 and had gone to preschool, came home and he said, "Mommy, why isn't it okay for boys to touch girls' boobs?" That was his question. And that was a question that she had to address. Now, if you're open with your kids, that's an easy question to answer. You can say, well, it makes girls feel uncomfortable. That's a place that boys shouldn't touch. And then you can explain that, like, within the confines of marriage or in a relationship or whatever your values are, that when you've reached an appropriate age, that would be okay. But you have to decide, first of all, what your values are, what you want to teach your children. Is your values that they need to be married before relationships like that take place? Then, talk about that. Are your values just that they have to be a certain age? Okay, talk about that. How do you know when your kid's mature enough to be involved in some sort of physical relationship? You need to think about those things and what your values are and what you want, because the reality is your child may be only 3 or 4 now, but eventually they're going to be 13, 14, 16, 18, 19, and you want them to know what your values are, and you want them to know this stuff before they reach that age. We are bombarded by sex these days, even when we don't expect it. I was watching a television show with my son and his wife and their kids, my grandkids. And I'll tell you the show, we were watching Malcolm in the Middle, and the mom and dad were in bed. Both were pretending to be asleep. You could hear in the background the boys out in the kitchen yelling, fighting, doing things, and then you heard one of them say, "Get the fire extinguisher." And at that point, the dad got up and he said, "Okay, fine, I'll go take care of it, but you better be naked when I get back." And the wife said, "Done." And that ended the scene. And the scene cut to a commercial, and my little grandson, who's about 9 or 10 years old at the time, said, "Why did he want to see her naked?" Okay, well, we all got kind of a laugh about that, and I was kind of happy that it wasn't my job to have to answer that question. I let mom answer that and take care of that. Luckily, my kids are very open with their children. They've already had the talk about sex, and so I'm sure it was very easy for mom and dad to explain to him why he would want to see his wife naked. Um, like I said, little young children, they're not embarrassed, so it's okay to have this talk with them while they're very young and talk to them about what sex is, how it works, why. Um, I remember that when I first learned what sex was, I was older. I was probably like 12 or 13, and my friend and I learned from her older brother. He told her, and then she told me, and we were both horrified and thinking, "Oh no, there's no way that our parents ever did anything like that." I We live in a whole different world now. Kids are going to learn about it, if not from a friend, then they're going to learn about it from TV, from music, from whatever. They are not sheltered. And we don't need to be embarrassed, because they certainly aren't embarrassed. Why would they be? The only embarrassment that our kids might feel is when they get a little bit older and we talk to them about it. And I have to tell you that where I am at in my life with my kids, I've had some very open and honest conversations about sex with my teenagers. And those conversations have come up because usually we're watching TV and something happens and they ask me a question. There's been times when I've asked them a question, like, I don't get that. Um, One question I asked one of my boys is, I don't get it. Why are guys like attracted to women who are so much older than them? We were watching a TV show and he was able to explain that to me. Um, doesn't matter what the answer was there, but my point is that you if you start this conversation when your kids are younger and you continue the conversation and use those openings that come up and answer those questions as they get older and as they get to be teenagers, it's so much easier to have the conversations and to make sure that the kids still know your values. Now, my kids still know what my values are regarding sex. Does that mean that every single one of them have followed those values? And the answer to that is no, I don't think that they have. But that doesn't matter. The point is we have that type of relationship where we can talk about it and where we can discuss it. It's I guess the thing that I want you to remember is start very young. Talk to them whenever the opening comes. Use the appropriate terminology and don't be embarrassed, because believe me, the kids are not going to be embarrassed. I think the last thing you want to do, though, is take aside, your 12 or 13 or 14-year-old son or daughter and say, "Okay, son, now's the time when we're going to sit down and we're going to have the talk about the birds and the bees." Believe me, they already have heard that talk. They've already heard it from friends. They've already heard it from the media by the time they're that old. So at that point, you don't need to tell them how sex works. At that point, the question would be more like, what do you think about sex before marriage? What do you think about kids who are having sex at your age? What do you think about birth control? What would you do if you got a girl pregnant at your age? What would you do if you got pregnant at your age? Those are the conversations you need to be having by the time they're teenagers. And if you have a hard time opening that up, then I would suggest, watching a movie where that topic comes up, or a TV show, or like even reading a book and bring it up, or read a newspaper article and then say, "Hey, I was just reading this newspaper article the other day and it said that this percentage of kids get pregnant before they reach the age of 17. Do you think it's really that high? Do you know that many kids that are engaging in sex in high school or in middle school or whatever?" I think that's how we introduce the topic when they are teenagers. Get their feelings, find out what their thoughts are, and do not freak out. Do not. I mean, if you're totally, let's say, anti-abortion and your daughter comes up and says, "I think abortion's okay," don't freak out. Don't get mad at her. Say, "Oh, really? Why do you feel that way?" And let her tell you her thoughts, and then you can tell her your thoughts without anger. The second you show anger, disgust, that you're upset, that you're offended or whatever, the conversation ends. You need to understand that. But as long as you're both two adults, even though she's not the adult, as long as you're both two adults discussing this situation. I'm sorry, there's a train going past. I live in a train town, and as you can see, I'm outside, so I hope this isn't too annoying for the video. But as soon as you act upset, then, oh, that is really annoying. I apologize. I didn't know a train would come past this soon. We just had one go past. They're very loud. You can hear that whistle. And in a minute, you'll hear the rumble of the train going past. I actually never notice the trains, except for when I'm doing something like making a video, or I'm on the phone with someone, or I'm trying to have an intense conversation, and then I notice it. The rest of the time I don't even hear the trains. Okay, I can hear the engine coming past. As soon as that engine's passed, then I can take up the conversation again. I'm just talking right now to kill time. Let's face it, I don't want to redo this video. I feel like I've done a good job so far. I'm even trying to have eye contact with the camera, which is hard for me sometimes. I tend to want to look at myself. Okay, that roar was the engine going past. Okay, so as soon as you act like you're shocked or revolted or upset or anything like that, the conversation ends, and you don't want to end the conversation. And if you act upset, if you act like you're in total disagreement and you're upset about it, the conversation will never take place again. Pretend you're two adults. It's okay to agree to disagree. You listen to her ideas and her thoughts respectfully, and then she will do the same for you, and she will listen to your ideas and thoughts respectfully. And she may continue to disagree with you out loud, but believe me, she will remember the things you've said, and she'll ponder those and think about those, and they may make a difference later on. The same goes with boys, you know. Talk to them. What are your ideas about birth control? Do you think boys should have to have take a condom with them all the time? And you need to decide your own ideas. Do you think you should provide your son or your daughter with birth control? Is that opening the invitation for them to have premarital sex, or is that just protecting them? I can't make that decision for you. You're going to be the one who has to make that decision. But those are decisions and things that you have to think about and talk to your kids about. You know, I can't say one way or the other, because every family's different. Every set of values that parents have for their children is going to be different, and you have to have those talks so they align with your values. But my biggest thing is, start while they're young, be open and honest about it, take advantage of when those opportunities come up. Even if you're just watching a little TV show and they say something funny, take advantage of that at some point and have that conversation with them. And as they get older, remember, do not be judgmental, do not freak out, do not be upset with them. Just listen respectfully so they will listen respectfully to you. I hope that helps. If you have more questions, then feel free to leave it in the comments section, or go ahead and email me if you want to do that. My email is grandma1abuela@gmail.com. Again, that's grandma, the number 1, abuela@gmail.com. So send me an email. I take those seriously, and I will either answer you privately through email, or I'll make another video answering those questions. Again, that's grandma1abuela@gmail.com. Grandma, number 1, not spelled out, but the number 1, abuela. Grandma1abuela@gmail.com. Bye.